How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the Real Estate Investing Club. Gabe, your host here. We have a very special guest with us today, so grab your pen and paper and prepare for some wisdom bombs coming your way. Before we get started, I do want to say that this is a free course, and we do really enjoy doing this. So the easiest way for you to support us, if you like this show, is to subscribe, like, and share with your friends and family. That's the easiest way, and we really appreciate it. Secondly, we're an active investing company. We market nationally for properties. So if you want to join our buyers list, become a partner in a program, or if you want to bring us a deal for a single family, multifamily, or mobile home and RV parks, go to www.therealestateinvestingclub.com to get in contact with one of our partners. Finally, we developed a course for everybody wanting to get involved in single family, multifamily, and mobile home and RV parks. So if you want to do that, if you want to learn how to invest in those asset classes, go to www.therealestateinvestingclub.com and check out our course there. That's all I have to say for now. So I hope you guys enjoy the show, and I look forward to seeing you guys on the other side. All right, we are live. Adam, thank you very much for joining us today. How you doing?
Oh, man, Gabe. Hey, great to be on your podcast. I'm excited to get into this with you.
Perfect. I love it. So to get us started, why don't you tell everybody, who you are, where you're from, and how you got started in real estate in the first place?
Awesome. So first off, I was one of those original, let's just say Robert Kiyosaki people who they picked up a book. My parents weren't into real estate. Nobody else was into real estate. I didn't know anybody that owned rentals, anything else. Was completely self-taught, just picked up a book, and I learned that, hey, I need to think about passive income and what that looks like. So I was probably 16 or 17 when I did that, and bought my first property before I went to college, bought properties while I was in college. When I graduated, finally had enough little bit of money saved to do my first live in a fourplex. I live in one apartment and then rent out the rest. And I live for free. So for so many years, Gabe, funny story, when I moved out to California, I hadn't paid rent to anybody in so many years, and my auto draft to pay the mortgage was automatically done for so many years that I almost forgot to pay my first month's rent when I started paying somebody else again.
I love it. That is
True
awesome.
Story. I'm like, oh wait, this is terrible. I have to pay rent? I have to give somebody else a check? I had that little oh, that's not fun.
I love it. So you were doing house hacking before house hacking was a thing then.
I was just trying to live for free, and it worked.
That's awesome. That's great. But real estate investing, you have the background, you've been in there. It's not your main thing though. I brought you on because you are an expert in podcasting. You're killing it. You've done over 2,000 episodes. Tell us a little bit about, what you're doing today and kind of how that's going.
So first off, I get way too much credit for our work. I will say big shout out to my team who may be watching this, because without them, hey, I didn't do 2,000 episodes. I talked on the mic for 2,000 episodes. They did the editing, the producing, the distribution, and the thousands and thousands of social media posts that went behind that. So big shout out to my team for doing those 2,000 plus episodes. So podcasting, I'll tell you, it's one of those things I just kind of fell into. So I was a financial advisor. That's my background. I was a financial advisor for almost 14 years. I started my own shop and I wrote a book. And then somebody told me, hey, you should do a podcast and maybe you'll sell more books. I started doing a podcast. I did sell a little bit more books, but more importantly, I actually started to build a following, and then I kind of found my groove, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I really love podcasting. This is so cool. The community around it, everybody, meeting you, I've just met so many amazing people, and through the community of podcasting that, I tried some other things before, not downing them, by the way. So I wasn't the best YouTuber, even though I did 500 videos at one point over the course of a couple of years. Blogging, I can write a blog a day, and I do write quite a bit on our website, but that wasn't my thing. But podcasting, I don't know what it was. It was just that connection that you get when you're talking to somebody else. And if you think about it, when you're creating that audio, it's there's something new that's out there in the universe. So what we're creating today, Gabe, it's something new. There's a new piece of content that's out there in the universe that others can benefit from, hopefully.
Awesome. I love it. And yeah, to give everybody context, I actually was on Adam's podcast earlier, which is why I wanted to bring him on because he was an amazing host. And he's also looking for other guests to be on his podcast. So we'll cover that later. But if you run a business and you want to be on the podcast, Adam is a great person to interview you. But Adam, so you have 7 podcasts right now, 2,000 episodes, largely due to you and your team. Your team is a integral part to that. You said you kind of got started because you kind of fell into it. It's not it wasn't your main focus going forward. So once you got started, like at what point did you decide or did you realize that this was actually a viable thing, both financially for yourself?
Oh, I knew the exact moment. It's clear as day. So we were, I don't like to tell people no. Like I have an audience. Maybe it's my finance background. I don't know what it is, but I was attracting all these amazing business owners that wanted to be on the show. And I didn't want to tell people no. So I just I kept doing them. I kept on doing episode after episode. And before you know it, there was a day that we had 30 episodes that needed to be released that were in the backlog, because we got so much demand to be on the show. So I thought about it, and I just told I told the podcast producer I work with, I said, you know what, just release them all. He's like, what? Release them all? And when? Today, release them all. And I was like, and he's like, we can't do that. You can't release 30 podcast episodes in a day. And I was like, release them all. So he released them all, and our per episode download went up.
Huh.
Think about that for a moment. Like, I would think, like, if you release 30 YouTube videos on YouTube at one time, guess what? You're not going to get the same amount of views in all 30 of those. Ours had like this trajectory. So I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm building a real audience. Like this is a real thing. Like I couldn't believe it. I'm like, wait a minute, this is pretty cool. And so I started this, I said, okay, let me test this. Let me see if I can, I don't know, break the audience's back. I don't know, break their earlobes. Let me see if I can record so much that they don't want to listen to me anymore and that they're sick of me. that was my goal. And it hasn't happened yet. I'm releasing between 50 and 80 episodes a week now for on 2 years or something like that. So now it's, again, over 2,000. I say 2,000, but I think we're approaching 3,000 as of this recording in June 2020. And we're doing, I think, based on demand, we'll be doing 100 a week pretty soon. So that's why we had to change it to the 7 episode format. It wasn't because it was because we had to. It was because we started getting new interview requests that were outside the bandwidth of what my original show was intended to be. Originally, it was intended to be a money show. Well, What happens when you have a musician that wants to come on, or an actor, or what happens when you have somebody that's a tech engineer and wants to talk about their SaaS platform? Well, guess what? That's not a money show. So what we thought is we would create 7 different, and now it's about to be 8. We're about to launch Mission Matters Fitness, and I'm going to be the lead podcaster for the Fit Expo. So that's a big deal.
Love it.
I said, you don't have to work out. You just have to podcast about working out. That's okay. No.
I could sit here. You could work out. We could talk about it.
So now what happens is we created this audience. We created a platform to where whatever you want to listen to, you can just pick and choose the types of interviews and the types of formats you want. And it just kept growing and growing. And now that brings us to the overall platform.
I love it. So, one of the main reasons I started podcasting was because networking. I really didn't have a financial goal with this. I just wanted to start meeting people, networking, and it's really I'm into 40 episodes, nowhere near 3,000, but I can see how it could build on itself. And I've actually had a lot of people ask, in the real estate industry, they see the benefits of podcasting, and so they're interested in starting their own podcast. So taking the perspective of, the Adam who's just getting started and the perspective of yourself today, what are the big tips that you would give somebody for who wants to start their own podcast? I know it's kind of a difficult question to answer, but if you could just give, I guess, 3 tips on starting podcasting, what would it be?
Gabe, that is not a difficult question to answer. I help people start podcasts every single day. That's what I do. No, that's an awesome question. Seriously. So first thing is, don't be intimidated. So I recorded my first 1,500 episodes on my phone and with Apple headphones. So let me see if I see them around here. I don't have them. Oh, here they are. I'm going to go get them just because I want you to see this. Apple headphones, 1,500 episodes. The first 300 episodes weren't even edited. I just put them up there, and the audience still grew. So podcasting, unlike other things, it's forgiving. Like, people want to listen to you if they like you, they like your laugh, they like what you're talking about. Like, I can't explain it to you, but think about it this way. I try to remember back in the day, and for the youngins out there, they may not remember, but there's these things called CBs and the radios or walkie-talkies. Think about a walkie-talkie. If you were around during Nextel days, that is not perfect audio. It's even got a little crackle in it. And guess what? They're addictive, and people like them, and they listen to them, and they're out there in the forest with their walkie-talkie. Yeah, they can still hear, and they're not obsessed with is all of this like perfectly clear audio. So I tell people, number one, do not be intimidated. Like, just do it. And it's forgiving. And I believe that to the point to where after the first 1,500 episodes, that's when we decided to do the rebrand and make the 7 different ones. I even left all those subscribers. I left all of that content on the old podcast. We don't even update it anymore, and started from scratch. And we built a brand new audience and subscriber base. So that's the power of podcasting. If you're willing to work, if you're willing to put in some episodes, if you're willing to promote, you can do it over. You can start over again. It's forgiving. It's not like a YouTube channel. It's not like all these other things. Like, it's so easy to do that you can, that just don't be intimidated. Because then on the other side of things, I do have to give an example. The other side. So I run a podcast school, and I teach people how to podcast. And that's one of my big passions, because I want to create an army of podcasters out there. It's fun for me to do this, but it's more fun. I can only do so many. Maybe I could do 150 episodes recorded a week maximum. If I teach 100 other people to do a couple episodes, now I'm magnifying my effect in the universe. So that's my ultimate goal with this. But I have some students, like they'll like start up immediately, and I'll tell them that story I just told you. And I'm like, my first podcast was launched in under 1 hour. I have a free course on my website that you can take, that it takes you less than an hour to do, number one. But number two, if you just follow what's in that course, your podcast is up and running. Everything's done. So my first podcast was done in less than an hour. The cover, I didn't even have a real cover. I took a screenshot of one of my books. I just kind of like cropped it a little bit. I took a screenshot. I put it on there, and I was like, oh, there goes the cover. And we're going to call it the same thing as the book. Why? Because that's what we got. And let's see if this thing works. So I don't care. Like, just put your picture up there. Like, don't get all, like, you can redo it. You can change the cover anytime. You can do whatever you need to do. It's not a big deal. So you said give 3. That's the number one tip, is just get started. Some students, they take me up on that. They do it in an hour, then they redo things, and then they get the mic in, and they do all the other fancy stuff they have to do. Great. But other people, like, they're like a year later, and I'm like, come on, dude, launch your podcast. I'm like, I know it's going to be perfect. I get it. And I know your process, but you could have already had an audience, like, by now. Like, a year later, you could already have a freaking huge audience.
Yep. Absolutely. I love that. And so I want to, you covered a lot of things so far, and I love it. I want to dive a little bit into the nuts and bolts of how podcasting works for people who do want to get started, especially in the real estate industry. I know I had a guest on yesterday who had been on 80 real estate shows himself. And so, there's a ton of podcasts out there. Creating good content is key. When it comes to the processes and the systems of running your podcast, what are the big tools? Like, when I got started, it was very labor intensive. I didn't really understand what I was doing. I was like going from one tool to another. What's the main tool that you use, or the main tool that you would recommend other people use when they get started in podcasting?
So you're going to need a couple things. So you're going to need it's really simple. You're going to need something to record your audio with. So whether that's your, like I said, headphones, it could be, I have headsets everywhere. Here goes another one that I used. I use a trucker mic too. Like, there you go. This is the trucker mic. I use that one. And this is, by the way, this is what I record my podcast on today. Love it. And I still use my phone to record. So need some, I still do. Oh, and I have the other fancy ones too, and all the other, but I don't even use them. Like, all you need is some type, and I have to elaborate. So you need headphones. You need something to record with, right? As you can tell, I'm a podcaster, right? I'm like, what do you want? You want equipment? Come on. Where do you want up above me? You know, I have nothing up above me. So you need something to record with. You need a host. So a host just means you need somewhere to put your podcast on. That's all. So think of it as like it's the website for your podcast, but it's not a website. It's just called a host. And I use Buzzsprout, so that's the one that I use. There's plenty of them out there, but that's my plug for Buzzsprout. You need that, and you either need to edit or you don't need to edit. So let me repeat that. So I know plenty of people who record on Zoom and they don't even edit. They just they pull the audio file and then they put it right on there. Oh, there you go. So you need to edit, or
editing takes time, and if you're running another business, like I agree. Your podcast, I was listening to them. They sound crisp. I love them. But if you're running a business, another business on top of podcasting, it's just sometimes you just don't have the time. I just throw my podcasts up there as they stand, no editing. I put an intro, outro just to make it a little bit, make it a little bit more professional. But sorry, I jumped in there. I just love that comment you said.
No, I love it. And just throwing this out there, it's not an either or proposition. So meaning people want real content. Like, so if you think about what you're doing, like let's think about the mechanics of it. So you're basically, it's a mix between a reality show, a vlog, and a podcast. Why? Because in a vlog, you got that feel of, you can see what they're doing, you can see what's going on. It's not it could be edited a little bit, but not really. Then you have the podcast, because that's where it's distributed. And then it's got the reality show feel. Why? Because it's uncut. If we're messing up, if we say, blah, 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 it's in there. And so people like that. So I wouldn't say it's an either or. It's more your style or fit. So they're not a trade-off. One piece of content is not better than the other based on the way it's distributed, because here's the bottom line. The audience is huge. Some people may want to listen to your podcast because it's like that. Like they like it. They like when you mess up or something happens or like something else happens. They're waiting for it. So some people may watch it because of that. Some people may not listen to mine because it sounds crisp. They're like, this is too formulaic. This is too blah, blah, blah. This guy's boring. And I don't get into it as much. I like to do different things with my guests, so it's different. So the bottom line is, the more important thing is for you to consider what your tone is going to be. So the tone of the podcast. So now let's just say, Gabe, because you're going to keep doing this, and in many years, you're going to have this massive audience and you're going to be all these people that followed you for this. And now you're like, hey, I want to switch over and I want to do a different format. Well, now you may lose some audience. Why? You may gain some other, but you may lose some. Why? Because they may have liked the other format better. They're like, this is too polished. This guy went all Hollywood on us. Now Gabe is doing all this editing and all this other stuff. I don't like this guy anymore. So think of the tone of your show as the most important thing, more so than the equipment and all that other stuff. And the best way to maintain your tone, especially because if you're just starting out, you're not going to be a professional, right? My first probably 1,000 episodes sucked. I mean, I'm getting better now, going 2,000 after. I hope I'd be a little bit better, but not claiming the first 1,000 were good. But people still listen, so they are forgiving still. But that being said, the tone is important. And the way to maintain your tone is essentially just to be yourself, which isn't easy, but just be yourself.
I love it. And that actually kind of piggybacks into the next question I was going to ask. Building, it's one thing to release episodes and you just put yourself out there. And that's definitely the first step. You gotta cross that threshold. But then the next goal that you have is always to build your audience, to build the people that are actually going to be listening to you. You mentioned tone and consistency in releasing content. So, I mean, those are great tips, and I've heard it before. I really feel like, I'm not an expert. You're the expert here. So, if you could give tips on just building your audience, is it tone and consistency in releasing content, or what are the other big tips that you can give there?
So social media is your friend. People like social media with podcasting. So a big mistake that I find that so many podcasters make is they don't post their podcasts on social media, as funny as that sounds. So for example, every single episode we do. So let me just, let's just round, I'm going to round down. Let's say that we release 50 episodes in a week. So for those 50 episodes, we put them on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Pinterest, the blog. So that's 7 different platforms for one episode. Now, what makes us a little bit unique is now times that by 50, right? So you can see we're doing up to 400 social media posts per week with our content.
Yeah.
So we're going to go. So I'm doing a year's worth of content every single week, where our goal is to do a year worth of content every 2.5 days.
Wow.
So that's where we're heading as a company. But I don't want you to be intimidated by that. What I want you to do is learn from the lesson that it works. But for you, the growth may be a little bit slower because there's less content, but it may not be. The main thing is that you have to be consistent with doing that, the post on every single one. I'll tell you the funniest story. So the other co-founder here, Shirag, he tells me we have to do Pinterest. And I'm like, I've never been on Pinterest. I don't even know what Pinterest is. Like, I know what it is, but I'm like, don't moms go do recipes on there? For the moms listening, put in the comment section, Gabe, who is this guy? Like, what are you talking about moms and recipes on Pinterest? You don't know anything about Pinterest. You're right, I don't. I know about podcasting. But I also know this. When we look at our Google Analytics, Pinterest sometimes drives us more traffic than LinkedIn and Facebook combined. Come on.
That is, I would not expect
that.
that.
How would you? I wouldn't expect either.
I've opened Pinterest like twice in my life. Yeah.
It's magic. And that's the point, is that, like, so if you're like, let's say you're like, okay, Adam, this sounds great and this sounds well, but I only do 1 episode a week. Well, I would challenge you to do this. How about you find more social media platforms to put your content on? So Medium, we like Medium. We just don't have time. Alignable. And another thing that we do is we run a full podcast agency. So I actually, for people that don't want to edit and they don't want to do other things, I have a team. We literally create podcasts, and we have, it's a machine. It's like I like to say I'm the Henry Ford of podcasting. I got the assembly line over here. We just keep on going. Keep those cars going. So, but Alignable. So a client of mine was like, hey, we have a pretty big Alignable following. And I'm like, I know what Alignable is, but I've never posted on it. Like, I'll figure this out for you. So I went on there, boom, now we got Alignable. And I'm like, so if you see this, I would challenge you, if you're doing 1 episode a week, to on the weekend, or have your marketing person or do something like that, there's probably 30 social media platforms out there. Easy. Maybe there's 40, maybe there's 50, maybe some are smaller. I would challenge you to take that 1 episode that you're going to create and post it on 50 different platforms, and create your process to do that every single week. And you don't know where the traffic's going to come from. You don't know how, but come on, Pinterest. I didn't even know, like, how am I getting all this traffic from Pinterest? The numbers don't lie.
I love it. I love it. And so, I mean, time is the big thing for me when it comes to podcasting. Like, I love doing it. It's like one of my favorite things to do, but I just can't, dedicate myself as much as I would like to. So I look for things to kind of cut the time down. You're talking about distributing to all these different platforms. Do you use Hootsuite or what? How do you do the distribution point of that?
We do it. So, I have a team. So we do it manually, and some people do use Hootsuite or use other things like that. We're a little bit more high touch, and we have to, because we're doing it for our clients also. Yeah. So it's a little bit different for us, but I'm a fan of automation for it. The one thing though I've found in my personal venture through social media is you can tell when you're using an automation platform. Like a lot of times the audience can tell, because you get lazy, you stop writing different things, you stop changing formats, you just start copying and pasting, and you're not going to build a real audience. Like, people can tell if you're using Hootsuite and it always looks the same. You're not gonna, like, to me, it doesn't build an authentic audience. So I'll put you in 2 different camps, Gabe. If you have the budget and somebody's out there listening, then hire us. Like, that's how you do it. Why? Because it's done for you. Like, editing a podcast, we charge $50. Who cares? Why are you going to spend 2 or 3 hours sitting there messing around with the podcast when you can send it to us and it's edited for $49.99? Like, what's more valuable for your time? If you have the budget. If you don't have the budget, then that must mean you have time. If you have time because you don't have the budget, then you need to get out there and you need to do it. I like doing it manually. I know the tools, I've seen them, and I can just tell you on the back end, like, our audience doesn't grow. Like, I don't know how. I can't say why or how. I don't know if it's because the API on the back end, like, whoever out there knows more about tech than me, I just know one thing. When we post manually, it grows. It keeps on growing. We get more reach. When we use a tool that's just automating and kind of just getting it done for the sake of getting it done, I don't know, just something changes on our analytics. It just doesn't work as well. It becomes nobody sees the tweet. Nobody sees the thing. I don't know how to explain it, but it doesn't work for us.
That's interesting. That's interesting. I'm gonna have to try that. Try going manually. I use Hootsuite and WordPress to shoot it out there. But I like that. I like that little tip. That's good.
Maybe a bad tip, by the way, Gabe. I'm not saying that that's based on anything other than our observations. So just to be clear
Yeah.
out there,
Hey
like,
man, it's worth a test,
because
right?
Hoopsme has the hugest following. There's like 250,000 users or something. I'm like, everybody's gonna be mad. No, that's wrong. That guy doesn't know anything. Hey, you're right. I don't know anything about that. I know about podcasting. I know what we use to grow ours. That's all I know. And I'm just telling you what we've noticed.
Hey man, yeah. I mean, some things can work for you and not for others, so it's worth a test. That's what I say. I do try to keep these around 30 minutes, so we are closing in on the end of our show here. But before we do, I'm sure people would get mad if I didn't ask about monetizing. I don't do this for the monetization, but a lot of people will be doing it. So what is a good tip that you would give for monetizing a podcast? What is it done? I actually wouldn't even know where to start. Is it done by? Do you have to have another product to monetize it, or can you also sell ad space? How's that done usually?
So just to be clear, so every business, this is a misconception. In media, every business has a product. When you turn on the TV, there's a product. Like, just because you didn't pay per se for it, like they're selling ads, they're selling stuff on the back end, there's always a product. So this is not different than any other business. So how do you make money? You have to have a product. It's not different. So we have 8 different profit centers, and those build gradually over time. Everything from we help people publish books, to our podcast school, to the podcast agency where we're helping people start their own podcast and editing their podcast, to our podcast school, so we have 8 till we sell the books. There goes another one. We have co-author book model. So there's a whole, to where people apply to be in our books that we publish. So there's a ton of different ways to monetize it. This is what I would say. Podcasting is inbound marketing. That's the one thing that I would say to you. So what does that mean? It means that if people listen to, we sell ad space. I mean, I think that's 7. I'm missing one probably. And affiliates.
A lot to remember.
Affiliates. There goes 8. Boom.
Oh,
So we have affiliates that choose to sell and market our podcast course. If they sell some, they get a cut. So we have 8 different profit centers. The whole point of me telling you that, though, is that it didn't start out that way. Most of those profit centers started based off of the audience requesting something from me. So, for example, I'll just give you one. The books, we didn't like. I started interviewing people, and they're like, "Hey, Adam, like, you do books. I want to do a book." And I'm like, "All right, that's good. Go do it." They're like, "No, can you help us do it?" I'm like, "I don't want to help you do a book." And they're like, "No, please." And I'm like, "Okay, we'll help you." And then it's the 2.5 years later or 2 years later, I've published over 100 people. So like all of these things, you don't have to like overthink it. Focus more on building your audience, number 1, but number 2, focus on your product that you're good at, that you have a knack for, that you have a talent. Don't go out there and do something else. So if Gabe, I know you said you weren't starting this to make money or to monetize, you just wanted to do it. Well, if I'm in real estate, there's the obvious ones. I want to get into syndication. If I'm not a syndicator, I want to get into syndication. I want to raise money. That's one reason to start a podcast. What are you doing? You're building your list. You're building your subscriber base. You're writing a blog. This is easy. This is easy content to produce. So you get investors. That's a good way. Number 2, I want deal flow. So I want to talk to other savvy investors that may have access to or may have some interesting deals in the pipeline. So they're sitting there and they're like, "Hey, Gabe, by the way, are you looking for any new projects right now? I got this guy, like he's selling this property. I don't have all the funds. I'm trying to put together a syndicate." I mean, he's giving the property away. That will happen over time. I've heard it from other podcasters where they're like, I didn't think that was going to happen. I made $20,000 on that deal. All I did was I introduced 2 people. Why? Because I was on the podcast and he didn't know this other person. I had to do it. He's like, "I made 20 grand. I'm like, "Well, that counts as monetizing." Like that's not why you're doing it, but there goes another way to monetize it. If you're selling real estate, you're a realtor, actual realtor, and you're buying and selling it, then now you have something to give to the people that you're following up with for their business anyway. So now you're selling more homes or buying more or whatever you're doing there. If you're a leasing agent, then you're doing the same thing. The main thing is to work with your gift and what you're given. Like, don't watch this and say, "Oh, I want to start a podcast school," or "Oh, I want to start doing books now. That sounds like a good idea." There's money to be made in what you're doing exactly where you're at with your niche and with your current skill set. You don't have to learn anything, in terms of like a new skill or a new trade. You could do it in anything else. I don't care what you're doing. There's already a market there for you. You just have to talk about it and create the podcast around it. And it will naturally monetize itself if you're being yourself and acting in your best in what you're good at. So for you, whether you want to monetize this or not, Gabe, it's going to be monetized. Why? Because over time, they're going to have an audience. You're going to have people there on the show that know you for having the real estate podcast, and things are going to come your way. It just happens.
Absolutely. That is one of the biggest things that pretty much every guest, this is an investing podcast. And so every guest that comes on here, they're always talking about relationships. And in my opinion, podcasting is the best way to network, or one of the best ways to network. And you said it yourself, you just put content out there, and eventually you're going to get a following, and you never know what can come from all of these different people that you're interacting with, both as your host or as a guest, and as the people that are listening and watching the show. So, I loved everything you just said. And for everybody listening and watching, there are tons of reasons to start podcasts. If you like it, I highly suggest doing it. It is a lot of fun. You meet great people. And if you want to learn how to do it, go to Adam. This guy knows what he's talking about. He's got 7, soon to be 8 podcasts going on, and almost 3,000 episodes. So he knows exactly what he's doing. Adam, we are nearing the end of the show here. Before we leave, though, I always ask if you could give one piece of advice, going back to the Adam started. How many years ago did you start release your first episode?
2.5 years ago, I think today.
Oh, man, I love it. That's so quick.
May, 2.5 years ago, May. Mm-hmm.
That's perfect. So if you can go back to Adam 2.5 years ago and give him just one piece of advice going forward in the podcasting sphere, what would that be?
Do more sooner. It's crazy. It's gonna be big. Do more sooner. And you thought you were doing a lot, but it took me probably, almost a year, maybe less, to get to that point to where I was at 30 episodes that need to be released in a day, because we had such demand. If I would have known that day one, I would have loaded it up. I would have sent an email to my entire network. I would have said, all right, hey, everyone wants to be on a podcast. Let's do it. We're doing it. This is happening. And I would have did 100 my first week. Instead, I spread that 100 out over a longer period of time. It took me probably 3 months, and I didn't have to. And it could have been that much bigger of everything faster.
I love it. I love it. Awesome. So Adam, thank you for coming on here, sharing all the wisdom that you shared with us so far. You've given us a lot on the show, but we all need to receive as well. So if someone were to bring you something, what would you want to receive?
Come on the show. If you're a business owner, entrepreneur, executive out there, go to missionmatters.com. So real easy look. Oh, there we go. missionmatters.com, and click on the Become a Guest tab, and pitch me your story. So that's what I tell people. You got a topic, you have a skill, you have an expertise, and you want to share it with the world. Pitch me your story. Tell me why you should come on the show, and we'd love to have you on.
Awesome. Again, Adam, thanks for coming on. For everybody listening and watching, thanks for joining the show, and we look forward to seeing you guys on the next episode. Thank you for joining us on the Real Estate Investing Club. If you've watched this far, I'm sure you've gotten a little bit of value out of this. So we would appreciate it if you hit that thumbs up, share it with your friends or family, whatever it may be. And if you'd like to share or partner with us on a deal, we absolutely love partnering on deals and are always looking for quality projects. Go to www.therealestateinvestingclub.com to get in contact with one of our partners. Otherwise, I hope you guys have an absolutely fantastic day, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.